we gonna make it.
Boxing King Media, in association with BYD, we are out in Dubai with Andy Clarke for the IBA show. Andy, how are you enjoying Dubai?
Yeah, good. It's nice to get out of the UK and get some warm weather in. It seems like we're in this part of the world a lot recently, so it's felt like quite a while since I was last here. But no, it's nice. It's really nice.
Yeah, definitely. This part of the world is putting on some crazy shows here in the Middle East. But let's talk about the one on Friday night, IBA show. Tell the fans who don't really know much about it what to expect here on Friday night.
So it's a card basically just packed full of really good fighters. So the IBA, the International Boxing Association, they were formed back in the 1970s, and they have been the governing body, organising body of international amateur boxing since then. There has been a situation that's arisen recently with themselves and the IOC and the formation of another body called World Boxing, which has made things a little bit complicated. Some people will be aware of that. We'll have to see how that plays out. But be that as it may, they are still historically, they are the governing body of international elite amateur boxing, and they put on terrific tournaments. I've been working for them for about 10 years, and particularly in recent years, the look and the feel and the money that's spent on these tournaments and the way the boxers are treated and the standard of boxing is just absolutely tremendous. But what this is slightly different. So this is the IBA Pro Series. So they're branching out more into professional boxing, and they're providing a route through into pro boxing for elite amateurs from any country potentially, but particularly I think the idea is for fighters from countries where there hasn't previously been an infrastructure that's allowed them to turn pro and kind of like stay where they are. So you think about Uzbek fighters, Kazakh fighters. For a long time they just boxed as amateurs and never really turned pro. But in recent times they wanted to turn pro. And as has been the way of boxing, it's been, well, you need to go to America and make it in America. And that's a massive culture shock to move halfway across the world to try and make it in America. And for some it's kind of worked out okay. For most of them it hasn't really. You look at Cubans, right? Yeah, it's the same thing for the Cubans. You look at someone like Jalala, for example, double Olympic gold medalist. He's turned pro in America and he's fought in America. He's with Top Rank, but his pro career is just not really, I wouldn't say it's not going anywhere, but it's not progressing as quick as it might have done because he's come back to the amateurs. Would he prefer to have been able to turn pro here and stay in Uzbekistan, Central Asia, Middle East, and build his career here? I think if he'd had the opportunity, yes, probably. So I think that's what they're looking at really, is they've got this catchment area of amazing fighters who previously would have to travel, just upend their lives and move halfway across the world. Under this system, they wouldn't have to do that. I think it's a real selling point.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great initiative, I think, for these fighters as well. So a lot of talent on show on Friday night. Now let's talk about what the weekend that just went. Obviously, we saw Sonny Edwards in the ring for what he says is the last time now he's retired from the sport. But a very interesting moment in the second round, I think it was, where he went back and said he didn't want to be in there. When you saw that, what was your sort of initial thoughts? Because I couldn't believe it. Obviously, we never really see that from a fighter. But what was your thoughts?
I was pretty. I was a bit shocked by that actually, because someone that experienced saying that is really unusual. Sometimes you'll hear something like that from a younger fighter if they've had a torrid start to a fight or a spell in a fight, and it's never really happened to them before, and they're just questioning themselves and they're wondering whether they could really do it. But from an experienced fighter, you can only imagine that he went into camp kind of feeling like that, hoping that that would change, and it just didn't. And then the fight started in a very difficult way for him. And I think for that reason, mentally, he gave up the ghost quickly. He would have been hoping that he would have been able to kind of feel his way into the fight, maybe find that groove if Galal didn't start quick, like he had in his previous fight, the one after Rodriguez. But it just didn't happen. Galal fight didn't allow it to happen, and you could see that he knew he was in trouble. Because he knows better than anybody, as well as anybody, that at that level you have to be completely focused. You have to really, really want it. And he knew that he knew that had gone slightly, and he knew that puts you in a really dangerous position. And on the night, it made it a bit of a mismatch actually.
What was your thoughts on the corner work? A lot of people have been criticising it somewhat, saying if your fighter doesn't want to be in there, you should pull him out, throw the towel in. But obviously, we know Sonny's a very experienced fighter for the highest level. You think his coach managed that situation correctly?
Yeah, he's got a lot to think about in that moment, and he won't necessarily have been expecting that. If Sonny's heart wasn't really in it, he may well have hidden it from his trainer during camp, and they're a new relationship, so he wouldn't necessarily be able to read him as well as somebody else. But the corner's hard because you've got very little time to make decisions. Their number one priority is always the well-being of their fighter. That's their number one priority, but it's not the only thing they have to think about. And it is complicated because sometimes you have to get fighters to do things that they don't think they can do, and in that moment don't want to do, but you know they can do. And particularly with younger fighters, you've got to force it out of them. With a more experienced fighter, when you hear him say something like that, that might give you more pause to think, actually, I'm not sure about this. But at the same time, he would have known, Chris Williams, and these are the things you've got to think about in split seconds. He would have known, if I pull him out after 2 rounds, that would be what people remember him for. He'll get absolutely annihilated. And I think if Chris had stopped and said to him, are you sure? Say that to me again and I'll pull you out. I don't think Sonny Edwards would have said it again, because I don't think he wanted to be pulled out after 2 rounds either, because he would have known what was coming his way. So he said it, but I don't think that was really what he wanted to do. I think he knew the writing was on the wall, but I think he did the right thing in the corner. I think he did the right thing. It's easy for people to say, well, you know, what's the point? You should pull him out. And I wouldn't. You can't, in a way, you can't argue with that, because you've got a human being saying they don't want to do something. But the corner is tough. It's complicated.
Yeah, most definitely, and especially with such a career that Sonny's had, he has left his mark in the sport, especially for the British scene in the lighter divisions. And it's really interesting, actually. He opened up on Boxing King Media, I think a few weeks ago, during Fight Week even, and spoke about how throughout his career he was smoking, and it's something that he's battled, and it's something that he faces on a daily thing. He hasn't been able to push it away, but he works just as hard. Is it surprising to you that someone who, you know, maybe smokes on a regular basis can still achieve those heights? I mean, it's quite incredible.
It is. I mean, it kind of depends how much he's been doing it and when he's been doing it. Nigel Benn used to smoke, for example, but he would, not all the way through his career, I don't think, but he would kind of stop doing it in the build-up to fights. I used to cover football for quite a long time, and what I discovered doing that was that quite a lot of footballers smoked. Managers didn't really mind. What they really didn't want them to do was drink and stay out late. If their way of taking the edge off was to sit on their balcony and have a few cigarettes in the evening, they weren't really bothered about that, because at that level where you're that fit, of course it's bad for you, but it's not really going to make that much difference. But the problem with something like what Sonny's describing there is it's more the fact that you've got something that can, if you let it control you a bit too much, because if it's an addiction, even if it's not really a particularly dangerous one, it can dictate your timetable a bit. You can it becomes very habitual, and it can get a bit of a grip on you in a way that's not helpful if you're an athlete. So, I mean, it was surprising, but I didn't fall off my chair at that one. It's not ideal, but maybe other people have other habits that they indulge in that aren't going to be helpful either, like they like to stay up late. Like a physio, I mean, if you said you can have an athlete who stays up late and isn't great at getting enough sleep, or you can have one who sleeps really well but smokes a bit, which is better? I think that'd probably be quite a difficult pick to make.
Last few topics to go over. Talk about retirement. Gervonta Davi announced that these last few fights are his last fights, and he's looking to retire in 2025. Feels quite early to me. I know he's achieved some great heights already, but what's your thoughts on that? You think it's a little bit early?
Yeah, I don't think he'll do it. I mean, I take fighters at face value when they say they want to retire, because I think a lot of the time in that moment they do mean it, and then they change their minds, or they're trying to make a few headlines. I don't feel like there's a lot more money to be made yet. There's a lot more big fights to be made yet. He's in a brilliant position where he's able to draw a crowd. He doesn't need to go anywhere. He's one of the very few who doesn't need to go and box in Saudi Arabia if he really doesn't want to. I'd imagine he will, because he'll get made an offer that he can't say no to. But I don't. At the moment, I'm not taking that all that seriously.
Talking about Saudi Arabia, obviously, first of all, we got the Fury USYK rematch coming up. The promo that they did, it's like a movie. I mean, let alone these insane cards that they're putting together. The promos are quite literally a film.
Yeah, the last two have been great. I love the one for Beterbiev Bivol. I thought that was brilliant, because it was just so kind of on trend with you can imagine them doing that, having that Game of Thrones.
These guys are becoming actors.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like the one for Fury Usyk. I think it's great, and you know, it does draw people in. Stuff like this is really, it really does work, because it's been interesting for me the last few years watching all the attention around Drive to Survive in Formula One and how much that's done for Formula One, and other sports following suit and making their own programmes. Sky have just done one about the darts, and people are saying, oh, we need one for boxing, we need one for boxing. And Top Rank have kind of done it, but people forget, we almost started that with All Access and 24/7 and all the rest of it, and we've kind of moved away from it a bit because it's expensive, and you need a lot of resources, and money's been tight across lots of different areas, just globally recently. But that stuff works. It gives people a reason to invest in the fight. So I'm all for that. And they've got a massive budget for it, so they can make it look the way it looks, which is just, I mean, it's so good, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about the February 22nd card announced as well. I want to just ask you, we know how crazy the card is, you've already spoke about it with the main event, the co-main event. What's the worst fight on it? And not worst as in bad, but what's probably the least attractive fight? It's hard to say because there's so many good ones.
Yeah, I would, if I had to, I mean, probably Shakur Stevenson, Floyd Schofield, probably. But that's just because, from my point of view, I'm probably least interested in that one. But it's Shakur Stevenson. Yeah, yeah. I've never seen him ringside, I don't think. I've covered him in amateurs, but he was off TV. So, and that says it all, doesn't it? I mean, if
Shakur Stevenson is the least interested one, that means the card must be insane, right?
It's a ridiculous card. It's an absolutely ridiculous card. Dubois Parker, Beterbiev Bivol, they're two headline fights on big shows. And then there's just loads of other fights that could headline shows. And then in the middle of it, for us, especially for the UK, Callum Smith, Joshua Buatsi.
I saw that at the bottom of the poster. That's a main event, really, in England.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be really difficult to make in England, because it's not just because they're on different networks and different promoters, and Eddie and Ben Shalom don't seem to really get along. It's more the fact that they would need to get paid a lot, and it would probably need to be on pay-per-view. Is that a pay-per-view that would really sell? I think it would be a tough sell. And Sky, for example, would they want to do that? I would say maybe not. But they can make it happen over there just like that. And it's a good fight, and not one that we'd really been talking about. We've been talking about Buatsi Yard, because Callum Smith against Joshua Buatsi just felt like, well, that's not going to happen, is it? But now it's happening, and it happened really quickly.
So finally, how do those two rematches go? Obviously the February 22nd, but more importantly, the one that's coming up, Fury Usyk as well.
I don't make firm predictions for ones that I'm commentating on, but I will say about Usyk Fury that I feel like Fury's got a very good chance. I feel like having a 12-round look at someone like Usyk would be really, really valuable, because he is quite unique in the way that he brings that pressure at heavyweight. Fury's unique too, so you could say the same thing the other way around, but I just think that could be really useful for Tyson Fury. I'm not saying he will win, but I think he's got a much better chance of winning than a lot of people are giving him. And what was the other one? Beterbiev Bivol, was it? I think we'll get the same again. A really close fight, and maybe a contentious decision, because I don't think either one of them. I think Beterbiev will feel he could have done better in that fight. I don't think Bivol will feel like he could do much better than that. Yeah. And that's why I think he was so upset about the decision, because I know in the ring he was very, very gracious, but I don't really see how he can do it any better. Whereas Beterbiev, I think, will feel like there was room for improvement there. It's just whether he can make the improvements, because that was a hard fight and he's 40. We keep going on about his age, but at some point it's going to matter, and taking a rematch 4 months after the first fight, it could be that night. That could be the night.
Well, Andy Clarke, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.